Hello. So last time we created Cloud NAT, and today we are going to deep dive and understand about the Cloud NAT rule. So how does it work and how to configure it? How we configured last time is we create the static IP, then we create the router, and we assign that static IP and the router, and then we create this Cloud NAT gateway. So here was the default rule. We went with the default configuration. So all the traffic will go through this particular NAT IP, and then it will access the data from the internet. So we check that and we'll validate same thing. So what I'll do, I'll just create one machine. One, and this NAT is configured in VPC01. So I'll just configure the VPC01 interface, and since it is going to be netted traffic, I'm just going to exclude the static IP on my instance, and it will only have an internal IP, and I'll just create the one. Now if I try to connect to the internet just to access the repository, since it doesn't have an external IP, but the traffic should able to go through Cloud NAT, and we should able to fetch the packages. So I'll just log in and validate. Yes, we were able to connect to the repository, and we were able to fetch that information, that repository, and there was no connection failure. Now what I'll do, I'll configure a service in here in my default, and in that service I'll run an application, Flask application, and the purpose of that app will just give you information like the application is hosted on which particular host and what is the hosted IP, and from which particular client is trying to connect to this particular application. So I'll just copy that git, and I'll configure this application in my instance, which is created in the default VPC. To install the application, there are certain prerequisites which I'm just going to do. I'm just going to install the git. I'm just going to install the Python virtual environment. I'm going to install pip so that I can install this Flask application. So I'll just clone my repository. I'll create a virtual environment. So now I'll go to my repository which I have cloned, and I'll install the requirements. Since the dependencies are installed, so I'll run my web application. This web application is hosted on port number 5789. So I'll allow the firewall rule, and remember the instance has been created in default VPC. Therefore I have to create the firewall rule in default VPC. So I'm default hello 5789. I'm allowing it for all the traffic, and port number is 5789. Yep. So firewall is configured, and we have this running. So I'll just validate this application is up and running. 5789. Yes, this is my request, my IP, and this is a private IP of the machine from where this application has been hosted. So I can see in here as well. This is the host instance name. You'll see the instance name here. Then this is the IP for it, and then this is the one who is requesting the page. So this is the IP from my machine. So what I'll do right now, I'll try to fetch the same page through sub1. This one is running on VPC 01, and to fetch the pages from the external world, from the internet, it has to go through the Cloud NAT. I'll do the curl for this page. Now you can see that requester is 139, the 203.1239. This is a static IP which has been configured on Cloud NAT, and right now that all the traffic in VPC 01 is accessing the internet through this particular IP. Now, what if I want to access through different and not through this particular IP? How do I can configure? In that case, I have to configure the rule. And how do I do? First I'll create a static IP. If I don't want my traffic should go through this particular interface to access this application, it should go through some different IP. In that scenario, I'll create a reserve one static IP. I'll say Cloud NAT IP 02 Central over US Central 1. It is not attached, and I'm just going to reserve. Now in my Cloud NAT, I'll just create a rule saying the traffic going to this particular application should be accessed from my this NAT IP, and the number lower the number has a higher the precedence, and make sure the number should be positive integer. So I'm just giving 2500, and I'm just going to save the config. So what it says now, the traffic going to this particular IP, which is my application 347868, should be going through this particular IP, the different static IP which we have recently configured, instead of the 139, and all other traffic for all other applications should be routed from this particular IP. So what I'll do, I'll try to access the page right now, and you can see the IPs through which it is going is 194. In here the request came from 195 instead of that. So what I'll do right now, I'll run another application in default. Now, as the rule says, for any other traffic it should go through this particular interface. So I'll just prove this point that this rule is working in VPC01 for this cloud NAT. So I'm just going to create this instance. This I'm just going to configure the same application on this particular instance, and the IP is different. So what the rule is saying, any other traffic except this particular one should be routed through 139. So I'm just going to validate this one. I perform the similar step for the installation of application. First I'll install the dependencies like pip and get. Now I'll install pip. Now I'll install Python virtual environment. Once all the prerequisite has been installed, I'll go and clone the repository. With the virtual environment, Python virtual environment. So I'll just activate the virtual environment just the way we did earlier. Now I'll go in my application. I'll do pip install requirements.txt. So it will pip install minus r flag I was missing. It will install the Flask. Once this all the prerequisite is done, now I'll run my application. Now this is another application which is running on 47, and I'll try to access HTTP. Now this is another application. Other one is configured on 47 and this one is configured on 49. So it is doing the kind of same application which I'm running on separate machine. In here you can see the requester and where this application has been hosted. So what I'll do right now, earlier I made the query into my previous application and we saw that according to rule it went to this one, and now the rule states all other applications should go through this interface. So what I'll do, I'll try to access this application from my machine sev1. The IP is so we can see this traffic is going through 139. This is what we have configured in the rule. So if I make a query to my other host, it goes through 195. So this is how we can configure the Cloud NAT rules. Thank you.